just hours before South Africans were expecting an increase in the price of fuel and all that would bring with it, as the country's fuel relief was scheduled to end, the news came that the government had reversed track, for now at least. South Africa's finance minister wrote to the parliamentary speaker urging that a 2-month extension for the general gasoline charge cuts be tabled. Now, this will be accomplished by extending the 1 rand 50 cents per liter respite for the first month from June 1st to July 6, 2022. And then from July 7th to August 2nd, 2022, the relief would be adjusted downward to 75 cents per liter for the second month. The interim reprieve is expected to be lifted on August the 3rd. Estimates say that the country will have to shell out 4.5 billion rand for the extension. The proposal, unlike the previous statements, is expected to have an impact on the fiscal framework because it will not be entirely funded through strategic oil stock sales. According to the announcement, the basic fuel price will also be reduced by 3 cents per liter in the following months. Over the longer term, a review will be conducted to analyze the retail, wholesale, distribution, and secondary storage margins. Today, the focus is on South Africa extending the fuel subsidy as prices soar. This is Business Edge. I'm Tolulokwe Adileru Balogun. Welcome. Joining me now from Johannesburg, South Africa, is Wayne Devnage. He is the CEO of the South African Corruption Fighting Civil Action Organization Undoing Tax Abuse, which is involved in fighting corruption and maladministration across all spheres of government in South Africa. Wayne, welcome to Business Edge. Thank you so much for joining me.
Nice to be with you today.
So what we would generally just call a form of subsidy, but what South Africa is calling a temporary fuel levy relief, it's not something that's been with South Africa for quite a long time, as maybe the subsidy conversation has been had here in Nigeria. So when did it come about, and what really was the reasoning of government for giving that relief in place?
Well, it came about in April, when the fuel prices were going up as a result of the Ukraine war, the international oil prices soaring above around about the $110 a barrel, and our rand being a bit weaker than what it should be. And on top of that, we've got high taxes, these fuel levies, as we talk about. I mean, we pay 10 rand per liter before we put pay for 1 drop of the petrol price, what we call the basic fuel price component. And that has crept up over the last 15 years by well above inflation. So it's put a lot of pressure on the on the petrol price. And civil society had turned to government and requested that they ease the pain, the shock of these massive increases in short spaces of time by reducing that fuel levy substantively, by the way, 40%. It was going to cost government. They thought it would be a temporary 2-month situation, but they've now had to extend it to a 3rd month, 3.5 months, and it's going to probably be extended again unless international prices subside or unless the rand strengthens.
So now that it's time for this relief to end, your organization and many others have made the case for government to extend it. But this is also something that's going to cost government in terms of lost revenue. In terms of that, losing the revenue and then this extension, some people might ask, is it worth it? So what's really the case? What's really the cause, really, in terms of having South Africa extend this relief? Just a few more months as it is right now.
Yeah, well, look, the bigger the shock in any month of fuel increases, it starts to impact quite rapidly in inflation. We're pretty much a country that is captive to road transport. Our government has allowed our rail transport, our freight transport by rail, and commuter transport by rail to subside and collapse, literally. They've not maintained it. They've not kept up the efficiencies. So there's a lack of use of rail in South Africa. So commuters get to and from work either by car or in taxis, and goods get to and from markets through road freight. So this is going to impact negatively on the economy and society. Now, the loss to government is obviously this around about 2.8 billion rand a month. But we believe that government has room to tighten their belts, to reduce maladministration, corruption, and misspending and find that money. So look within rather than lean on the taxpayer all the time to bail them out, which is what they've been doing for far too long in South Africa.
And that's another point we'll touch on. But let's look at this now. This 2 month extension looks more like a phased removal of the relief as it is now. The first month will have the R1.50, and then you'll go to 75 cents per liter. All of this is, of course, again, dependent on how things are shaping out with the Russia-Ukraine war and, of course, international crude oil prices. But beyond that, do you think this is really enough time? Is it a 2 month? Because we've already heard that August the 3rd, it will be lifted. Or shouldn't governments have left themselves room to review the situation instead of saying, at the end of this 2 month extension, we're lifting it and we're doing away with this relief?
Well, they said the same thing about this extension. So they only gave it for 2 months, and they said they would not extend it. This was up to 10 days ago, but the societal pushback was so loud and so strong, they had no option but to review it. So it's very, I think it's foolish of them to say we're not going to extend it again. And then if things do not get, if there's no relaxation in this pressure, they might have to review it again. So it's a bit early to say now, but for now, we're taking it a month at a time as it comes. And I think these are unprecedented moves. We have not seen our government introduce reductions to fuel levies ever in the past. In fact, in the February budget speech, for the first time, the Minister of Finance did not increase these levies, the Road Accident Fund and the fuel levy, which adds about over R6 to the price of petrol here. So just those two levies, again, weren't subjected to an annual increase. This is unprecedented. The decisions made by government, and I think it is a government that is starting to learn and listen and realize that the past government have been short-sighted in applying all of these additional increases well above inflation, as I said, and now the nightmare has come home to haunt them and the economy at the same time. So I think they will have no option but to extend it if the situation doesn't ease in the next month or so.
Okay, so your Organization Undoing Tax Abuse, presented a little bit of a slightly different proposal to government in the letter to the Minister of Finance. And I quickly want us to take a look at that. And what you basically asked is that government should consider phasing in the return of this R1.50 levy over the course of 3 months by 50 cents per month. Of course, as you said, unless international oil prices recover significantly. In terms of the proposals and the way that the government has now decided to go, do you think your proposal may have been a bit easier for the people in the long run, or is government really on the right path to this? And then, of course, if there's a review in the next 2 months, it'll be better.
So look, we think they heeded our call because one of our calls was to please extend it, and if you can't, to ease the pain. In other words, ease the increase back again. And they've done that. They've both increased or pushed the levy out by another month and indicated that they will ease the reduction over 2 months, not 3. So again, I think they are listening. They are taking heed of the suggestions of civil society. For the first time, by the way, this government in South Africa appears to be listening a little bit more to civil activism as opposed to shutting us out all the time. And they do engage with us. So I think those are some of the positives. But we're under, I think that what they've got to do is take a longer term views of how do they strengthen the rand? How do we fix the weakness of our currency? And how do we stop this incessant increase in taxes, that short term thinking? Because eventually this tax envelope is pushed too far and it has other negative repercussions which are coming out now.
So the next two questions are tied together, but let's start with this. It's expected that this extended relief now is going to cost the South African government about 4.5 billion rand in lost revenue. And as previously stated, this relief has been funded by sales of strategic fuel stocks, and now it's going to directly impact the national budget. What do you expect that impact to be? Even though, as you said, your organization is also saying government should use this as an opportunity to address the issues around public spending and waste, and also look at a way of bringing down the cost of government, which is a conversation that's being had across the continent. So on the one level, what do you think the impact will be for the budgets, for the fiscal framework, for the economy in terms of this 4.5 that's going to be lost in revenue? And then the secondary part, what really is the issue with government spending in South Africa?
Well, firstly, the loss to government is that 4.5 billion rand. Government is going to get 4.5 billion rand less than what it does in its annual allocations, which is well over 1.4 trillion. So it's small in this greater scheme of things, and we believe that government can fund it. And what we talk about is government tightening its belt, is looking internally. We've been speaking for some time around zero-based budgeting when it comes to governance. Our government is bloated. It is a high public sector cost in salaries, in benefits that accrue to people in government, as well as the maladministration that takes place. I mean, we have headlines literally daily around wasteful expenditure in government. So we're saying never waste a good crisis. The Minister of Finance needs to use this opportunity, look inward, introspectively, to his cabinet ministers and colleagues, and start saying, we cannot continuously pass on the need for our insatiable need and desire for a revenue onto the taxpayer. We need to find ways to reduce the cost of government unnecessarily. I'm not saying go and cut where we need it, which is in health and education and security and so forth. But there are areas that government can start looking at and prudent expenditure implementation to reduce the need for that 4.5 billion rand. And in fact, they should start taking a longer term view, because we have been saying it for a long time now. Government needs to reduce the cost of government on its taxpayers and citizens in this country.
All right, Swain, let's take a break. When we come back, I would look to you to paint a picture of what you expect would have happened if government had gone ahead to remove the subsidy. And then also look at the conversation around who truly do you think is benefiting from this relief? Because it's a part of the conversation we have in Nigeria when the subsidy issue comes up. So Wayne, just hold the line. The conversation is focused on South Africa today as the country, let's say just last minute or last few hours, decided to extend the fuel levy relief that's been in place for a few months. Now that's been extended by 2 months and will now be a phased removal. But August the 3rd could come and the South African government could again decide to extend the relief. The conversation will continue after this. And still with me is Wayne Devonage in South Africa. He's the CEO, Organization Undoing Tax Abuse, as we look at South Africa extending the fuel relief as prices of the commodities soar. Now, in his organization's letter to the Minister of Finance, Wayne, you stated that we are sure the negative impact to the economy and treasury would be significantly worse off with petrol prices above the 25 rand per litre mark. If the relief had been removed starting today as previously planned, paint a picture for us of what you think things would have looked like in South Africa.
Well, I think we just got to go back slightly. Just 6 months ago, the price of petrol was 20 rand per litre. And in fact, a year before that, 14 rand, just under 15 rand per litre. So it's gone up in a short space of time quite a lot. Now, what we do know is that logistics companies, as I said earlier, our goods are moved to and from markets via road. Logistics companies cost about 45% of the costs of running logistics is the price of diesel and fuel. And that cost is passed on to the consumer through higher costs of food, because it's passed on to the fast-moving goods industry, and they're just going to pass that on. So it has an inflationary impact in a short space of time of a few percent, and that's what the Minister of Finance needs to guard very carefully against, because if you start to get those impacts, those shocks coming into the system faster, then inflation's going up besides the price of energy and fuel. Electricity prices are going up 20% per annum over the last number of years as a result of mismanagement and high loans that were taken out to fix Eskom. So this is a perfect storm of a culmination of so many costs of state-owned entities and fuel that is hitting the consumer, and the minister has to control that. Another thing is commuters. Getting to and from work, we're trapped to vehicle transport again here. Rail doesn't work as efficiently as it should. So unfortunately, it's going to cost people to get more to get to and from work, quite a lot more, because just in the last 6 months, 20% increase in petrol, which was already high just 6 months ago. All of this culminates in a bad news for our economy, and our economy is struggling as it is. So that's really the impact that we have to negate.
So when we have this subsidy conversation in Nigeria, there are those who believe that subsidy on petrol does not actually get to those in society who need it the most, who would need the kind of relief, because they often are not driving cars, so they're not purchasing the petrol. But in South Africa's situation now, in terms of this 2-month extension, who would benefit? And then do you think that overall the generality of society, those who probably needed the relief the most, have benefited from the relief that's been in play in the past few months?
Well, everybody benefits from this relief. It's not just commuters and workers that get to and from work. It is, as I said, the price of goods on the shelves and the markets, food prices are going to be impacted. So I think everybody benefits. But obviously, people who travel in vehicles and cars benefit the most. But these are taxpayers who are under a lot of pressure. We don't get enough return on our taxes in this country. So, every cent now means that everybody is having to tighten their belts. So the benefits of this is society at large, but largely the motorists and the haulage companies again. But they just pass those costs on. Other than that, I don't have to tell you, and I know your oil price is heavily subsidized. I think it's you are an oil producing nation. Your cost of petrol is I think it's about 20% of our price of petrol. So I'm not sure if you, but I know everything's relative. I'm not sure if you see the impact of these massive increases in South Africa. But fuel is a big component when it comes to the basket of the cost of living.
And let's talk about that basket now, because you did mention Eskom before. All of this is coming at a time where the conversation around Eskom is still happening. It's said that South Africa now needs to prepare for its worst ever year of power cuts. Eskom is a company, a public utility that has been bailed out numerous times by government. South African Airways the same way. We've had the state capture controversy and scandal as well. So when it comes to South Africa adequately being able to finance state entities, or even get out of financing them and let them run on its own, so that the average South African, so that all South Africans do not bear the burden for these mistakes, what needs to be done? Because it seems to be everywhere. So now that you've added another 20% on top of fuel, as you talked about fuel prices rising in the past 1 year, you're talking about load shedding, power cuts, you're still talking about South African Airways not functioning, you still have the state capture. All of it does not look good for the most industrialized economy on the continent. So where is South Africa heading with all of this?
Well, we're hoping that South Africa is heading towards a new mindset of getting out of the business of business. In other words, for instance, airlines are highly competitive, complex businesses. Government does not know how to run them efficiently. We've seen that, as you said, lots of bailouts. And so they are trying to privatize that or semi-privatize it. But they're still making big mistakes, like holding on to armaments manufacturing companies like Denel, when again, business knows how to do this business a lot better. Government in South Africa should become more of an enabler of business, make sure that there's no exploitation, make sure that there's safety and the regulations and rules are followed, and become less involved in business. We think there's an appetite. We can see there's an appetite to move more towards that. But there are ideologies and the unions that are very close to government that don't want that. So there's this standoff. I think we're coming to elections with the ruling party at the end of this year. If we see some change there in leadership standing up now and taking a stronger stand to introduce investment-friendly policies, that is going to get mining going again, going to get job creation. But right now, for the last number of years, in fact, for the last decade or so, we've been very flat. We've been wasting money. We have got a bloated government that does not focus on efficiencies in government and ensuring that people get a return on their taxes. State-owned entities are failing. So we're seeing more privatization of energy. The renewable, the private energy sector is growing rapidly, more in the renewable energy space. And hopefully we can see more of that in other areas. But SAA must be let go of, and other state-owned entities. Government is just wasting time and money there.
All right, holding on to probably lost dreams. But as the news of the extension came yesterday, also some interestingly good news as well coming from Statistics SA. I don't know how you feel about that. Let's quickly touch on that, because we followed South Africa's unemployment figures throughout last year, and they were just dismal and very, very disappointing. But yesterday, the Statistics South Africa released data for the first quarter of 2022, and it reported that unemployment unemployment fell to 34.5%, just a point lower than the corresponding period of last year. And last year was really when the trend started, with South Africa ending up being the country with the highest unemployment rates in the world. In terms of this percentage drop, too early to start doing a jig and a dance. What do you think about it?
I think it's too early. Look, we must welcome any good news, and I assure you that government's decisions on reprieves being extended and this type of news is very good. So, but it is very small in the greater scheme of things. We shouldn't be where we are, in the 20+% of unemployment in one of the most unequal societies in the world. This inflation that is coming now with these high fuel prices might negatively impact on employment as well. So it might be a short-lived gain. We know that businesses tighten their belts when these costs go up, and that's where temporary employment and the new employment does go out the window. So it is good news, but I'm afraid it's probably not going to, it's going to probably bounce back in the next couple of months.
All right, so finally, as I wrap things up with you, Wayne, what it looks like is that the issues that would determine if South Africa extends this further in 2 months are tied to issues that South Africa does not really control, the Russia-Ukraine crisis, the supply disruptions around the world. But internally, what can South Africa do in the next 1, 2, 3 months to start shoring up its shock absorbers? Because we really don't know how long this is going to last, and all of us across the continent are feeling the pain.
Yeah, I think it's not really short term, but government can look at policy that strengthens the rand. And there are a number of ways to do that. Government can cut its costs to society. There are a number of ways they can do that. This is the budgeting season for government. And yes, if the international oil price goes up again and the rand doesn't strengthen, we're going to be in for another shock. And that's not going to be good. So we have to look internally. And I think, as I said earlier, a good crisis like this should never be wasted. And hopefully government heeds the call to look internally to reduce the cost of government. It is very possible. We know that because we've seen our government bloatedness and has increased the costs on society. It can be trimmer, it can be slimmer, it can be more efficient. And I think when they engage with civil society to find the many solutions that we have, we'll start to move in the right direction. So there's exciting opportunities for this country going forward, but government has to seize them as opposed to be belabored in its approach to the challenges that we have.
All right, Wayne Davenage, thank you for joining me. We look forward to having you back.
Thank you. All the best.
Right.
Bye.
And of course, the conversation is right now a 2-month extension, but there are, of course, the possibilities, very strong ones, that South Africa may have to further extend the fuel levy relief. All of it is tied to a lot of what's happening beyond the continent's borders, issues that many of us here on the continent do not control, but it also is forcing many countries to look internally to see how they can protect themselves from the global economic shocks that come. This is Business Edge. When we come back, a few stories we're keeping our eyes on. And we start in the southern part of the continent with NC4 to watch, where we are hearing that mining and commodity trading giant Glencore has helped fund Zambia's Mopani copper mines. The company has been unfortunately unable to pay its bills on time, and the state has yet to find a new investor more than a year after it took over the complex. Kenya's inflation hits a 27-month high in May on the back of a jump in the price of essential items like cooking oil, food, fuel, and soap, as well as unfortunately squeezing household budgets and the demand for goods and services. The latest major acquisition in Nigeria's financial sector is now concluded. Titan Trust Bank has completed an off-market acquisition of 89% of Union Bank of Nigeria PLC for 191 billion naira. And finally, crude oil prices moved higher on Wednesday after European Union leaders agreed to a partial and phased ban on Russian oil, and as China ended its COVID-19 lockdown in Shanghai. And that's Business Edge for you today. Don't forget to follow us on social media, download our mobile app, go to our YouTube channel, visit our website, and of course, watch us on all platforms. We are available to make sure you stay up to date with the latest in business, politics, sports, entertainment, and all of that coming from here on the continent. I'm Tolulope Adeleru Balogun. Have a fantastic day.